Hey YouTube, I'm here to talk about a very important topic that I think everyone should know about. It's been bugging me a little bit lately, so I think we'll just jump right into it. So, our topic today is why America doesn't talk about finance. Now, I think this is really a true statement. America doesn't talk about finances at all when it comes from personal life to school, and I think it's pretty important. Like, America needs to get into finance because the spot that we're at is not helping anyone. So I think we'll just get right into it on that statement. The biggest reason why Americans don't talk about their finances, be it personal or governmental or in any span of life, is because of the social norms. In America, we're typically thought and taught that you don't ask people about their finances. You don't ask people how much they make. You know, that's rude. You don't go up to your neighbor and say like, well, how much are you making this year? I noticed you bought that new car. Like, you get a raise. It's not something you do. You know, it's in the social norms that, I didn't even know what my father made for like years and years because you just don't ask about it. It's rude. It's not something that you do. It's part of the social norms. And in ways that's good because you don't want to go around bragging about stuff and being a dick, So this is something that's taught to everybody. You don't go up to your neighbor and say, how much you making, buddy? How much you putting away in that 401k? I saw you bought that nice car. Oh, I'm making more than you. I'm making 125. You're only making 100. What are you doing? So in some ways it's good because we don't gloat on people typically. You don't brag about your stuff. So in some ways the social norms are good, but it gets us away from, actually going in an in-depth dive on what we have in our finances. And I feel like this hurts us in a way that we never know how much people are making. And there's this common phrase of like keeping up with the Joneses. And typically this is a way that people would say about it. The Joneses, you're always trying to one up each other in the neighborhood. You're trying to have the nicer car, the fancier house, new painted, like good jewelry, nice clothes. And typically the thought on that is you're keeping up with the Joneses, trying to have nicer stuff than them, but you actually just make about the same amount as the Joneses. So you two compete against each other, not knowing how much you make. When typically if you live in the same neighborhood, you're probably in the same bracket of wealth, the same tax bracket. So the social norms helps and hurts because keeping up with the Joneses when you know how much people are making, you're competing against nothing. You're competing against debt is what you're doing. So I think the social norms probably one of the biggest things of why we don't talk about finance at all. And I feel like this has crept into school where teachers don't talk about finance. You don't learn about finance. The most finance you'll ever learn in school is in elementary school and middle school when you're just learning how to count coins and maybe they teach you how to write a check. They barely do that nowadays even. So social norms, we're just kind of, society has pushed us out of finance. Finance isn't important. Now that brings us directly to the next portion. These social norms and why finance isn't important is partially because of consumerism. In America, just like I said, keeping up with the Joneses, it's about buying new things, having nice stuff. And consumerism, it's almost a staple of the American lifestyle that we live today. Not the American dream, but the American lifestyle. Americans like to buy new cars all the time. New cars, brand new cars. Not just like, I'll get a new one for myself. Buy the brand new car, the $60,000 Escalade, the $80,000 Escalade. It's all about consumerism, having the nice clothes, having the jewelry, having the newest phone, having a brand new house. And I feel like this also partially leads to why we don't talk about finance, because it's more about what you have, like keeping up with the Joneses. I bought a new car this year, they didn't, so I'm consuming more than they are. I must be more wealthy, I must show more of my wealth, I must be in a better stance. So I believe that consumerism really leads to why we talk about finance, because when you see someone wearing that Rolex watch, driving the brand new BMW, the brand new Mercedes, you think, well, they got to be rich. Their finances, they got to be straight. They're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. They're doing well. But that's just because of consumerism. It's because of the things we buy is how we perceive wealth rather than the finances that we're actually taught about. Because I can definitely see people driving around a little shitbox, wearing, the cheap watch, wearing the cheap clothes, but, they're invested in real estate. So that person is really the wealthy person. So the consumerism is one thing we get used to. We pay way more attention to that than actual finances. We pay way more attention to what you buy, how you buy it, when you buy it, how often, rather than what you actually make. It's more about what you spend when it comes to finances around here. It's the consumerism. I want to keep up with that. So that also leads into the spending habits of America. I feel like partially, and maybe this is one of the main reasons. We'll just give it a plus there. Give it a plus because this has got to be one of the number one reasons. It's the spending habits of America. You can't really see that, but it's there. Think about it. Because the spending habits of Americans, I think this is the biggest reason we don't talk about finances nowadays. We don't talk about how much you're saving, how much you're putting away, how much you're spending every month, is because the spending habits of Americans, when we look at it on average, there's lots of Americans that are just living paycheck to paycheck. So they're spending about every single dollar they make. And when it comes to that, if they're going to start talking about finance, there's not a lot to talk about. And it comes back to the social norms too. Like, you don't ask about that. Like, they may be consuming really hard, spending all this stuff, and it looks nice, but you don't ask them, if they're living paycheck to paycheck, because obviously that's rude. That's kind of demeaning. That's like, you don't talk about that to people. So a lot of people live paycheck to paycheck, and I feel like when you live in that lifestyle, when you're into that sort of habits, then at that point, finance isn't the most expensive thing. What you're thinking about is, I need that paycheck to make sure the water bill gets paid. I need that paycheck to make sure the electric bill gets paid. And now I got a little bit left over. So now I'm gonna go enjoy. Because that's everything that people say. And the spending habits really leads into the social norms in another way, in where in America, we always tell people, money doesn't buy happiness. You don't need to be rich. You don't need to do this. You just need to follow your passions, do what you love, enjoy yourself. That's what they say. Enjoy yourself. Life is short. It could end tomorrow. So I think this is the biggest thing that also leads into spending habits, is the social norms. We tell people, live for today, enjoy, be with the people you love. And that's a great motto to live by, except for it affects our spending habits probably more than anything. Because when you tell people, don't worry about it, it's not the most important thing, money isn't everything. Well, when money isn't everything, and it's not very important, and everything else is more important, well, why do I need to worry about it? And for a lot of Americans, living paycheck to paycheck isn't a big deal, because money isn't the most important thing. It doesn't matter if I have millions of dollars saved up, because I don't need to be a millionaire. It's not a big deal. It's not the best thing for me. It's not what I need to be happy. But unfortunately, people don't realize that just to have like $2 million aside, you might think, oh, I'm doing well, I'm a millionaire. But if you're any person that's 50 or more getting ready for retirement, you need about that much saved up just to survive your retirement without going into debt or relying on government assistance. So this is important. Our spending habits truly, I believe, affect probably more than anything the reason we don't talk about finance. A lot of people aren't in good financial situations. The average American has less than $1,000 saved away. And I feel like it's hard to get people to talk about finance when they're not in a good financial state. People want to stay away from that. Once again, leads back to the social norms. So I feel like this is a big, big part. And for Americans to talk about finance, if we started talking about finance, I think this would change dramatically. Our spending habits, the way we do everything, how many people are living paycheck to paycheck, how many people have less than $1,000 saved up. I mean, it's dramatic. Like 56% of Americans don't have $1,000 saved up. That is disgusting. It's saddening. Like, it shouldn't happen like that, because adults that are living their lives, they need more money than that to keep up with any expenses that may come up. I mean, if you own a car, anything could happen that could cost more than $1,000. I mean, if you just blow out your tires and need a new set, and that could be $1,000 right there. You don't have that saved up, you're putting on a credit card 25% interest, and you're getting screwed real quick. So I think it's about as much as I have to say on the spending habits. Probably one of the most important, so I spend a little more time there. But if you want to learn about finance, or if you're not very interested in finance, the best thing to track and pay attention to is your spending habits. It's going to make the biggest difference in your life compared to anything else, compared to investing and saving, anything else. Pay attention to your spending habits. Now, we're going to get into the next topic here. And this is another reason, probably number 2, of why I think America doesn't talk about finance enough. They don't talk about debt. They don't talk about the financial situation that the average American is in. And it's because our country is a nation of debt. I mean, how could the government be preaching these programs, teaching personal finance in schools, when our own government doesn't know finance? Our own government is drowning in debt. Like if I wrote out our debts, just chopped off a few numbers of our government and told you this is what an average American household is doing, you'd say this is terrible. They're drowning in debt. They're about to die. They're going to go bankrupt. Like if anything happens, they're screwed. That's exactly what you would say if you looked at how much our nation is in debt. And unfortunately, I feel like this kind of fuels it. You know, people, they spend out more than they have, and at the end of the day, they're left with nothing. It's hard to survive when you don't have any wiggle room. And they say, you know what, the government should help us. The government should help us. That sounds good. And people in the government are like, yeah, I want to help them. Like, you know, that's my job. I'm in the government. I got to help them. And unfortunately, these all lead together to our nation of debt. We don't talk about finance. We don't study finance. And that means our government officials don't talk about finance. They didn't study finance. Maybe some of them did. Maybe some of them took lots of courses in economics. Maybe some of them did all this other stuff. But when it's a barista from a coffee shop making laws on economics, you know, chances are they haven't spent extensive amounts of time on university campus studying complex economics. And this is hard for our nation because if we're going to run our nation from a poor financial state, how are we to pitch to Americans that they need to follow their finances better? How are people in the government to tell Americans that they're doing their finances wrong when the government is doing it worse? The government knows nothing of finance. They spend money ridiculously. In fact, if you guys want a video, this is not a big channel. If one person leaves a comment that they want a video on government spending, government waste, and taxpayer abuse, I'll make that video. I spend lots of time researching that every day, and it's a big thing to me. So, and this is another big thing because if you want to know where your taxes are going, you need to know about the government, how they spend their money, and you want to make sure they're using it right. Our government, you know, tries to do a lot of things, and sometimes it doesn't pan out, so that money just goes straight out the window. And, you know, when we come down to a nation of debt, it's not just our nation. We have a massive national debt, but there's several states in America that are just on the meniscus of bankruptcy. They have way too much debt for anything, like California per se. They were cutting police officer and fireman pensions, cutting them because they just didn't have the money. They're too much in debt to be able to support the people who have already worked for them and were promised to get money. And I think that's sad because those are people we need. We need to make sure that people sign up for that and continue to do that into the future. And if they don't think they're going to get paid after their 20, 40 years of service, we might not have a lot of people signing up to be police officers and firemen and, you know, paramedics. And that's a dangerous thing. You know, we talk about, you know, safety, healthcare, protection in America. And we need to make sure that our government's finances are in place because they take care of a lot of this stuff. They make sure that all that stuff is set up for us. And we need to make sure that they're using our taxpayer dollars to fund these things correctly. And unfortunately, you know, if they mess something up, that's on our dime. And, you know, they might come around asking you, I'll take another %, take another 2%, just to help it out because it doesn't matter. You know, at the end of the day, if the police system is failing, they don't have enough money, you're going to want it. You're going to want it to be working correctly. So you're probably going to forfeit that tax money, but that comes down to you. So don't think that our nation being in debt doesn't affect you. Oh, I can pay attention to my finances. It's all right, you know, with the national debt. Like, don't, you know, someone will get it under control. You know, maybe a few presidents later, someone will deal with it and it'll be good. We can't ever look at it like that. People do that with their personal spending and their spending habits. You know, oh, I got this credit card debt, but, you know, next month I'll deal with it. You know, that's how people think about our national debt. They say, you know, the next president will deal with it, or maybe like these Congress people will help. But we need to get a hold of this. And I think if we can get Americans talking about finance and paying attention to their finances and investing, then I think we can really turn this nation around. It'll be way easier. The amount of taxes that the government will get will be good and stable, and we wouldn't need to spend so much on social programs just to help people that are barely making it by. If we could hopefully teach more Americans about finance, hopefully get people to take care of themselves, and then that money can go into just improving our country, paying down the debts and making sure that our entire country isn't an unfunded liability. So I think with that, those are the most important topics I had to get to. And, you know, any of these could be a big thing you want to look more into. you know. Um, but a good thesis is I think we need America to start talking about finance. I think it's what's important. We need it back in the school system. We need as low as elementary school, I think, even on the lowest levels, but high school for sure. We need people learning in high school because only 60% of people actually go to college and graduate. So we need to teach that finance before that, because if we can get those high school graduates that didn't go to college, they didn't pay that money, maybe they weren't in a good financial state to do it, then I think it'll really change their lives for the better, and it'll really help a lot of people out. So with that, that was why America doesn't talk about finance, and hopefully we can change that. So until next time.